In this video, I'm going to share the true cause of type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. But before I do, you're going to want a little bit of context. So I'll provide a simple explanation that explains the mechanisms. And even if you have type 2 diabetes or you feel like you understand type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, I'm guessing this explanation and the true cause will surprise you. So my challenge to you is to see if you can identify the true cause and write it down before I deliver the punchline. It's not obesity, it's not insulin resistance, and it's not pancreatic dysfunction. And where did I learn all this? Well, there were many places, but this book was one of the biggest. Diabetes Unpacked was written by a collaboration of extremely well-researched doctors, PhDs, and thought leaders in the space of diabetes. And it highlights a few very scary trends. There are over 400 million people in the world dealing with diabetes right now, and that number has quadrupled since the year 1980. The traditional thinking about diabetes is that it's a slow, progressive disease that you can't do much about. And this is obviously terrible news if you're a diabetic, because diabetes comes with some serious health complications, like loss of eyesight, amputations, and even death. But we now know that designation is wrong. And there are dozens of studies that show that in this book, but I'll point out one in particular at the end of this video that will really highlight the point. One thing's for sure, there is no denying that a lot of the most recent scientific research paints a very clear bullseye on the culprit. And as a personal trainer and nutrition coach, I love learning about this stuff because it helps me better serve my clients and create better programs for them to get the best possible results. So for you watching this, regardless of your situation, I really hope this is helpful. Let's jump into it. Starting from the top. When you eat food, it goes into your digestive tract. And as the food is broken down, your body then takes the raw ingredients and transports them throughout your body. One of those raw ingredients is glucose. And as you digest food and glucose starts to enter your bloodstream, your body sees glucose in the bloodstream and it signals to your pancreas to start producing insulin. Now, insulin is a hormone that basically acts as a key that allows glucose to enter your cells. So insulin attaches to insulin receptors on the cell, and that allows glucose to enter. And then your cell can use the glucose as fuel. Now, I'm going to use kind of a goofy analogy to explain this. Let's say your cell is a house, and you need to feed the people in the house. So what you're going to do is deliver them pizza. Pizza is the glucose. So your body's going to deliver the pizza to the cells, and then in order to get inside the house, you need the key. That's insulin. So after insulin attaches to the insulin receptor, it acts as a key, allows glucose into the cell. So the pizza is delivered to the house, the key unlocks the door, and now the house has food in it. Now here's what starts to happen that eventually leads to prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. Your cell has already had the glucose delivered. The people in the house, they're sitting there, they're eating their pizza, they're having a good time, and all of a sudden, another pizza delivery man shows up with another key. So the cell's like, okay, I guess we'll take some extra pizza. So now there's 2 pizzas in the cell. But then that continues to happen. So another pizza man shows up with another pizza. Now, eventually your cell says, we have had enough. We do not need any more pizza. And so what starts to happen is what we call insulin resistance. And that's basically where your cell deactivates the insulin receptors so that insulin no longer works as a key to allow more glucose into the cell. By the way, my name's Andrew and I'm the founder of Longevity Lifestyle, and my main mission is to give you the knowledge and the tools to live the absolute happiest, healthiest, and longest life possible. So if you like this type of content and you want to see more of it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. The people in the house are like, we got enough pizza, and they bar the door and they say, no more pizza. This is all very well intentioned from the perspective of the cell or the house. Insulin resistance is actually a protective response by the cell so that it doesn't become overloaded with glucose or overloaded with pizzas. The problem is what happens when the insulin no longer works as a key, the glucose ends up going back out into the bloodstream. And that signals back to your pancreas to produce more insulin. But the problem is the key's still not working. So this cycle continues where more glucose tries to enter your cell, the cell rejects it, and then your pancreas produces more insulin. And eventually your pancreas produces enough insulin that it actually forces the cells to open up and accept more glucose. So eventually the pizza man comes to the door. He's got all the different keys. He allows as many pizzas as possible into the cell until the entire house is stacked with pizza. At this point, your cell is panicking. It's saying, we are absolutely too full to accept any more pizzas. And what happens next? that's when the pancreas can no longer produce enough insulin to get more pizza inside the cell. And so what we do, that's when we inject insulin and force more glucose into the cells. And at this point, the cell is completely overrun. There's glucose spilling out and going back into your bloodstream. And this is where the really negative downstream effects start to happen. Because when your cells are completely filled to the brim with glucose, and then all the glucose starts going back into your bloodstream, but you can't produce enough insulin to get it into your cells, you end up with chronically high blood sugar. And then that glucose starts being sent around the body to other organs. So your heart, your liver, your brain, your eyes. And this is kind of gross, but once the glucose starts to attach to these different organs, it actually starts to make them rot. Your eyes start to rot and you go blind. Your kidneys start to rot and you need dialysis. Your liver rots, you get fatty liver disease, and your legs start to rot and you get diabetic foot ulcers. But before I freak you out about any of this, there is a cure, and it is not more insulin. And in a moment, I'll share with you that study I referenced that'll explain why. But first, let me ask you this. If you were packing for a trip, and you were having trouble fitting all the clothes you wanted to bring in your suitcase, just like the guy that didn't want more pizza, would you keep cramming more clothes in your suitcase until it breaks? Or until your clothes are falling out and all over the place? Or would you put less in the suitcase? If you haven't figured out the root cause of type 2 diabetes and prediabetes yet, I'll give you another hint. Your body loves glucose. Whether or not you eat it, you produce it from fats and proteins through gluconeogenesis. But while some glucose is good, too much is toxic. And the true root cause of type 2 diabetes and prediabetes is chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption. And there are only two ways to solve for this problem. Option number one, you can stop putting sugar or glucose in your body. And specifically, I mean non-vegetable carbohydrates. Or option number two, you can burn it off. The best solution is actually to do both of these. And this study looks at the available evidence for reversing type 2 diabetes, which is the same solution for reversing prediabetes. Every person in the study had type 2 diabetes. There was a group that got bariatric surgery. There was a group that did a low carbohydrate diet. And there was a group that did a calorie restricted diet. All three groups benefited from this, but the low carbohydrate diet and the calorie restricted diet benefited the most. And in fact, after 8 weeks, the group that had severely restricted calories had 100% remission for type 2 diabetes. And for context, it was 600 kilocalories or less that they were eating per day. 100% remission. And even better, after 3 months of going back to their normal eating patterns, which likely caused their issue in the first place, 64% of them, or roughly 2/3, were still non-diabetic. And why did the caloric restriction work even better than the carbohydrates? Well, it makes sense. You're not eating as many carbohydrates, but you're also not eating as many proteins and fats, which your body can ultimately convert into carbohydrates through gluconeogenesis. Diabetes doesn't always come with obesity, but they both have a very similar root cause in the chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption. And that happens because so many of us eat a highly processed diet that doesn't just contain an abnormally high amount of carbohydrates, but it contains an abnormally high amount of rapidly absorbing carbohydrates. So it's like an army of pizza men showing up to your cells and forcing the pizzas into them. Part of this issue too is that for the last few decades, we've been told fat is bad and not to eat too much protein, when really it's the reverse. We should be super mindful of our carbohydrate consumption. So if you or someone you know is pre-diabetic or dealing with type 2 diabetes, please know that there is a cure, and quite frankly, share this video with them. Obviously, none of this is medical advice, and it's really important that you work with your doctor, and especially if you're taking insulin, you do not want to go on a low carbohydrate or severe calorie restriction diet while you're taking insulin. You need to be very careful with that. And even if you're not diabetic or pre-diabetic, but you're just looking to lose weight and feeling frustrated that nothing you're trying has worked, I use a 5-step system with my clients, and it gets fantastic results across the board, and I outlined the entire thing in this video here. Thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.